our next speaker is Theo Goda, who is with the Arctic Submarine Laboratory. Theo is the program manager for the U.S. Navy's ICEX program, ICE exercise program. This includes spinning a lot of plates in the effort to put on these ice camps, the most recent one being ICEX 2018. Now, as Theo, I'm sure will explain, these ICEX campaigns, the focus of them are to support submarine exercises, giving crews the opportunity to operate under ice-covered waters. It also has creates an opportunity, as time allows, for some Arctic research to go on from the research community. I've sat in the room watching Theo at work, and I can tell you he is incredibly great at juggling an awful lot of balls while at least outwardly maintaining a calm demeanor. I don't know how he does it. I expect that he must be at the doctor's with ulcers, because it's an incredible job to keep going. So I look forward to hearing about your perspective on how things went, Theo.
Well, thanks, Jackie. I appreciate that. I think you might have missed a few moments that I wasn't calm at ICEX, but
where you went off in, I think you went off into a back room.
Like you said, though, it's a large exercise, quite a bit of participants, and obviously it's submarine focused and U.S. Navy focused. But it does provide a platform for research, both I would say academic and applied research, basic research, and opportunity for some training events as well. So you'll see on the very first slide here, obviously we had 3 submarines that participated at ICEX this year. United States, we had quite a bit of participation from all of our service levels and government agencies. Royal Navy and United Kingdom Ministry of Defense participated. And obviously the Canadians, Royal Canadian Air Force, Royal Canadian Navy. We put all of these flags up there because they all participated in the actual operation of the ice camp or at the basing location in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. I can go to the next slide. So just a word of warning while this is coming up for the next slide. I am not an Arctic expert by any stretch of the imagination. My background here is in submarines. My education is in aerospace engineering, specifically astronautics, and somehow ended up on submarines with nuclear engineering. So this is the reason why I am quite interested in the organization, right, and seeking out others who are experts. Because the Navy, not only do we not understand what the left hand is doing from the right hand, we don't understand what the thumb is doing from the index finger. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Okay, so the strategic objectives, obviously it is U.S. Navy, and we are the submarine force. Basically, the submarines are the only platform the Navy has that can conduct operations in the Arctic year-round. And, the whole purpose of the Navy really is about freedom of the seas and freedom of navigation. So a presence that the Navy can operate up there, and that's kind of what we do, is ensure that the Navy is able to operate up there. It just so happens that it also provides an opportunity while we're building an ice camp that we think we can support other missions. So in 2014, the Chief of Naval Operations was there and mentioned that, hey, there's a lot of other opportunities. We spend a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money. Let's see what else we can get done and just leverage the platform that we have. So, we've opened it up. We've opened the aperture significantly up in 2016. In 2018, it was a little less, and you'll see that here in a minute. Part of that is because of the return for the United Kingdom to the Arctic and our role in supporting them and one of their submarines that went up there. And then if you can go to the next slide. The other reason why that probably a little less R&D was done, a little less S&T, was because we are also supporting a tactical objective this time, which was torpedo exercise. So the launch and recovery of exercise torpedoes, obviously torpedoes that don't have warheads on them, that's a very logistic intensive task. I think it's taking a little time to advance the slide here.
Yeah, there seems to be a significant delay, but it's on the next slide, at least
Okay.
from what I see.
So I'm just going to go ahead then. So for us, our plan at ICEX really was 14 days of operations. That's not a whole lot. So 10 days of that was going to be consumed with the torpedo exercise. And unfortunately, when we looked through the planning of this, we calculated we needed about 49 people to do this event, just to have multiple dive teams, recovery teams, multiple helicopters and crews, logistics personnel on the ice to recover. And so our limit really this year, we tried to reduce the numbers, was 50 people. So 49 of them were helping out with the Torpex, didn't leave a whole lot of other room during that time period for R&D. So we added 4 days, which we focused on other stuff, tactical development, just submarine operations, and can we put in any other type of R&D or S&T during those 4 days. Obviously, that was condensed considerably, so we tried to accommodate a few other organizations during the ice camp build and during the demobilization. And I'm getting some errors on this website. I'm not sure why, but
Looks good from our end, Theo, so.
okay, I'm just going to keep talking then.
Yep.
So as I'm sure a lot of you are quite aware, right? You have to support the people that support your program and who actually fund your program. So, so we have to bring out senators, Congress, those such folks to our ice camp. Secretary of State was scheduled to be there. I think it was 3 days prior to him showing up, he got fired. So that was an interesting conversation. So we established the ice camp, and the plan was for about 50 people a night. And we ended up going up to 59 people. We had to accommodate a few extra people because some significant weather issues. And it's just, the exercise torpedo event is a little more manpower intensive than we anticipated this year. You can go to the next slide. The ice camp itself, you'll see in subsequent slides, we were not that far from Prudhoe Bay. We typically look to be somewhere around 150 to 200 nautical miles out. And this year we were definitely a little closer in, which actually helped with logistics. And we accomplished the ice camp build in about 5 days. That was the plan. And 15 days of operations, like I said, and we demobilized the ice camp in 4 days. So this is the first time that the ice camp has ever been completely demobilized. So the only thing we left behind were those buoys and a couple of biodegradable trash bags marking the runway. And the airplane that was that you guys saw in the pictures, that actually was a plane that was damaged during the events. And helicopter did go back out there, cut off the wings. They drained of all oil, fuel, all that kind of stuff. Got the engines, the props back. Got the fuselage back. Unfortunately, the wings were not recoverable. They ended up getting melted and frozen into the ice. Okay.
So Theo, we're on the ice flow selection and monitoring slide.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to put this one up here because it was quite a bit of difference from previous ice camps. And so in collaboration with University of Alaska Fairbanks and National Ice Center, we really decided we wanted to do something that was a little bit more quantitative in our process here to select the ice flow. So initially we started by identifying targets just using radar sat imagery through the Naval Ice Center, and University of Alaska Fairbanks was tracking ice flows, and so was the NIC. And so we were basically all looking for candidate ice flows. Then we shifted to, in the second picture there, you see the C-130, U.S. Coast Guard out of Kodiak, ended up flying. And I think, Jackie, you were on that plane, right?
Yep.
So I've flown on that in 2017. I kind of like flying up on that to get a bird's eye view, a nice kind of visual observation of the lower Beaufort and seeing the different types of ice that we're flying over. And during that event, there were some Pacific Gyre ice tracker buoys that were thrown out of the plane, and all survived and were used to track some of the candidate flows. So out of Prudhoe Bay, we went to a pioneering phase, and during that, we actually took the locations from those from the overflights for the ice tracker buoys, landed on several ice flows, overflew some other ones, ruled out a few that we couldn't land on or just weren't suitable for the ice camp to begin with. So on the ice, you have multiple personnel from University of Alaska Fairbanks, UIC Science, which is a Inupiat owned company up in Barrow, Ukpavik now, and then Arctic Submarine Laboratory as well. So during the event, actually taking ice measurements, coring samples, and electromagnetic induction. And from that, also looking at, and on the last picture there, just kind of a bird's eye view for where would we put the ice camp, where would we put runways and backup runways, does it logistically make sense? So it's kind of a long, drawn-out process. And that's kind of what you're seeing down there at the bottom. This is some of the analysis done by UAF from the EMI sled, which helped us compare multiple ice flows, and we use that to say which one we thought would give us the best probability of surviving and be able to be supported throughout the entire length of the ICEX. So from that, we ended up picking a location, and you know, after the event, we still continued to monitor, you know, satellite imagery, you know, use visual observation flying to and from the camp, and then you know, Naval Ice Center, I think, worked with NRL, the Naval Research Lab, producing that regional ice strain and fracturing risk, which looked at more of a, except regional, kind of more of the southern Beaufort Sea area. On our level, that was quite useful, although the guys at the ice camp, you know, really looking for more of a micro scale type of thing, but it still allowed us to say, hey, you know what, next couple of days here, you know, we're seeing, you know, weather shifts, the wind directions changing. It's getting later in the season. The, you know, Barrow Arch is coming. The seasonal breakup is coming. So we got to make some changes to the ice camp. So that was definitely useful and a departure from previous ice camps. If you go to the next slide.
No, I think Meredith, back up, if you would.
So I'm just on slide 5. This will be a quick one.
Yeah, this is the ice camp changing with the times.
So I only went back a couple of ice camps because at 2014 Ice Camp Nautilus, a lot of the ice camps looked very similar to this. A lot of wooden structures that took about 2 weeks to build, and at the end of that ice camp, for their demobilization, they just burned down the hooches. Well, in 2014, the Navy changed its mind. I think the EPA had something to do with that, and said, you know what, burning wooden structures in the Arctic is not something we're interested in continuing. So in 2016, we modified quite a bit. Basically, the goal was getting every single thing you take out onto the Arctic ice, you bring it back. And so we made some good progress in 2016. In 2018, we continued that trend. Much smaller, lighter, more portable camp. Basically, everything fit into a Twin Otter, and in case we had to. And we ended up, like I said, demobilizing that entire ice camp in 4 days. Slide 6. I thought it was interesting on your website. I basically cut and pasted a small paragraph there on ice camp drift. And it's interesting because, you know, I mean, this is exactly what we've been seeing. So if you look back at ICEX 2016, at the time, we were saying this is the most drift, at least net drift, that we've seen in the program. We've had some years, like 2003, with 130 nautical miles, but that was over a 2-month span. In 2016, that was about a month, and the same thing with ICEX 2018, a little less than a month. So obviously, what we've seen quite a bit of difference in the ice coverage and especially in the amount of multi-year ice coverage in that Beaufort Sea. And what's not shown here is 2017. In 2017, we went up. We did not build an ice camp, but there was no multi-year ice whatsoever in this region. And so basically what they're saying there with increase in ice drift speeds, you can always corroborate that obviously with the buoys that are out there. Just our ice camps have also observed that as well, and it has a significant effect on our ability to build and maintain that ice camp logistically. So slide 7. These are a few of the academic research projects that are at ICEX 2018. So you can reach out to any of these groups. I think they'll all come back and tell you they probably wish they had more time on the ice, and we wish we could have afforded them more time on the ice. And the next slide goes into some of the challenges we faced and why we probably couldn't get more time for them. But in any case, we did have several groups out there. Naval Research Laboratory, they've done this multiple times in the past, but they continue their efforts for understanding the acoustic environment in the Beaufort Sea. NRL also wanted to bring out a unmanned system underneath the ice. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that. The same with MIT and a few others as well. But the Naval Postgraduate School had several projects up there, and some of their work was very similar with NRL, and so they collaborated together on this, understanding the ocean environment, the acoustic environment, and they had an opportunity to get on the ice twice, at the beginning and at the end of the ice camp. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, obviously was out there again, and they were assisted by Woods Hole, and they performed a lot of the acoustic testing. You see in the picture on the right, the acoustic source being lowered down. Krell was out there as well, once again in the beginning and at the end. I think Krell had done some interesting work. I don't want to get too far out in front of the work that Krell is doing, and I'm sure they'll be producing a paper on this as well. But taking a look at what they were seeing with their ice stress sensors out there, and they were feeding that data back to us, and what we saw with the fractures that occurred through the multi-year ice and the first-year ice we're using for our runways, and it looked like it was promising on our end to be able to operationalize some of the research that's being conducted. JAMSTEC, this was the first for us with the Japanese participating this time, and they ended up putting out a warm buoy and a sidekick. So I actually haven't seen any of the pictures that have been produced by that yet, but I would like to at some point. But I believe they are also contributing their buoy data through the International Buoy Program. And then lastly is the submarine collected data. So I don't think this is out there yet, and obviously this takes a little bit longer. We've received data packages from the boats, and we have samples, of the water they collected on their trip under the Arctic. They're in our freezer, and that will be released as well. Next slide is the slide 8. Just kind of mentions, okay, these are some of the battles that we faced, especially in 2018. It's probably nothing new on this slide to any of you, really. Weather continues to have a significant effect. The weather, you can fly an aircraft out of Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, that's fine. You may not be able to land it at the ice camp. Or you may send 2 or 3 different aircraft and only one of them lands. So that happened to us quite a bit. And we had to make some changes in our operations, had some significant.
Theo, are you still there? Sounds like Theo might have dropped off the call.
It looks like he, Meredith, that he muted
Okay.
himself.
Sarah, can you unmute him?
I'm trying to, but it's not unmuting. I'll send him a chat.
Theo, are you there?
In Theo's absence, while we wait for him, Meredith, and time's growing short, I think it's worth moving on to his next slide, which I think folks will be particularly interested in. This slide really describes some of the work S&T opportunities that ICEX will be promoting in order to do a better job of supporting these ICE camps. And again, I would urge, based on what we heard at last week's workshop with the Department of Defense in general, these more expeditionary camps, they include an ability to know where multi-year ice is, being able to, on a very small scale, predict ice fracture so that they will know what's coming at them and whether or not if an ice camp's deployed, whether it needs to be abandoned. Better measurements of snow and ice thickness from the air so that it's easy you can cover a larger range and get also some real detailed reports on what you're going to be getting when you get to the ice camp or where an ice camp might go, communication systems, and also just in general the ice camp infrastructure, being able to build ice camps that are easy to deploy and easy to tear down and get out of there if need be. I don't know if Theo came back on or not.
No, we lost him entirely.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
But again, I think that these are all areas where needs are occurring, and those of us who are in the research community should be considering whether they have work going on that can lend a hand. I don't know, Martin, you might be able to comment on how O&R might figure into, if they would figure into supporting any of this, or where that might type of work might get funded.
Jackie, can I interrupt? I do think Theo rejoined us. Theo, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. Thank you.
Hi, Theo. I moved on to your last slide because I want to make sure we got time to see it.
Yeah, it was kind of odd. I could hear all of you, so even though I got kicked out. Anyway, so as you said, these are a couple of things that we're looking at, and there may be some things out there already that are address some of these that I just don't know about. So that's kind of one of the reasons I put it in here. I know O&R is, actively funding several things that are similar or kind of like the first one here with the long-range multi-year sea ice forecast. I really don't know if this product exists or not. I've asked Naval Ice Center and NRL. Basically, for us, after 2017 and our scare with no multi-year ice whatsoever in the lower Beaufort, we're not real comfortable with building an ice camp on first-year ice. So we looked at the end of the summer melt in 2017, and then at that point, well, it looks, chances are we probably will have some multi-year ice in 2018. And so we were comfortable there. It's a $9 million project this year. So our concern though is going forward, we end up putting a lot of money, time, and effort into this. And we're talking 50, 60 different organizations that end up participating. And if there's a way to know in advance whether or not we're actually going to have multi-year ice in a specific area that we're looking at in advance, 8, 9, 10 months in advance, that would help out significantly and give us the opportunity to change locations if we need to. The other one is the micro scale ice fracture risk model prediction system. That we're looking for there is really something that helps us if we're taking measurements from the ice, looking at satellite imagery as well, and running models as well with weather info. Basically, can we have something that gives us a comparison that says, this area of ice has a greater probability of fracturing or breaking up than this area? If so, then we would change the ice camp location or change the runway location, or just give us an advance warning if there is high probability of fracturing events coming up in the next 24, 48 hours. We might do something different with our personnel or just with the operating posture of the camp. As far as the other ones, you know, the aerial ice measurement, I know that there are some electromagnetic induction type things that you can hang from underneath an aircraft. We're looking at something just smaller scale, faster response times, something that would prevent us from the old eyeball check, which is kind of how we do it right now. We fly over the ice and we look down and we use, you know, experience basically to say, you know what, from visual observation, that looks like a safe area to land. If we actually had physical measurements of the ice, I think everyone would be a little more comfortable with that. As far as communication systems and ice camp infrastructure, that'll just continue on. I'm just kind of curious if other people who operate ice camps or operate in the Arctic have other equipment and gear that works really well for them that we can investigate and try out ourselves. And that's really all that I had.
Okay. Thanks, Theo. We're at the top of the hour, but I see a few folks on phone. So if you could, if you have a question, speak up now. We could take one or two.
Jackie, it's Martin. If I could make a comment or two.
Please do.
Well, first comment is I was pleased that there was some science-informed decision-making involved in the site selection of the Navy ice camp this year. That's among the reasons why ONR supports research in the Arctic, that we hope that it will support the Navy in its operations. So I hope this is the beginning of a new approach to the operation of the future ICEXs. Science has a lot to offer with respect to the site selection and the operation of the camp, and then the demobilization. Second comment, addressing something you mentioned a moment ago, Jackie, that ONR, the Arctic and Global Prediction Program, always welcomes white papers that describe compelling basic and unclassified research, and that could include basic unclassified research that is has potential or actual value to the Navy, and we would certainly be interested in seeing more basic unclassified research taking place at the ice camp. And if that can help out with the entire ice camp operation, then so much the better.
Great. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and close out. I would encourage anybody with that list that Theo showed at the end, which again will be posted on the IARPIC Collaborations website under the ICEX collaboration team. If you have work that's going on that you think that's pertinent to the challenges that Arctic Submarine Laboratory has seen, please be in touch with Theo. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to hear what work you're doing, and also take Martin up on the challenge. So that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much.